And so like here we are with Mars, they're saying, okay, let's develop a healthy habit. You know, we have the time to do this. We have the structure and the space to do it. What are some things that we can develop? Aloha everybody, and welcome to the Wild Wahine. This is Kaylani, and this is your astro forecast for this week, January 24th through the 30th. So we have three things that we're really going to talk about this week. Mars is ingressed into Capricorn, which is going to be bringing a lot more energy and to like building some structure and getting some things done if they've been like hard or if you've been feeling a little extra lazy recently. We also have Mercury, which is retrograde right now, moving back into the sign of Capricorn, again lighting up that place. Our Capricorn placement is going to be just like, yeah, you know. And then we have towards the end of the week, my favorite transit of the week, which is Venus stationing retrograde in the sign of Capricorn. So essentially this is like all about that Capricorn placement in your chart this week, because that's going to be where most of the energy is going to be lightening up. So make sure you look at the bottom of the video to find out where that placement is and what area of your life it is going to be affecting. So we'll start off with Mars entering the sign of Capricorn. So Mars in Capricorn, Mars is in its exaltation here. So when a planet is in their exaltation, it essentially means it's a place where the planet has a lot of power and a lot of energy, and it's like doing really good work. It's like it finds it very easy to do the things that are very natural to the planet, and it tends to be a little bit more constructive, generally speaking. Now, wherever Capricorn is in your chart, that's been an area that's been lit up with the Venus retrograde. It's going to be lit up more with Mercury retrograding back into Capricorn. So this is probably a place that's a little tender anyway. So having Mars in there, bringing in all the energy and the inflammation and all the things that Mars has a tendency to do, might not feel necessarily as constructive, but you will in general have this like energy to kind of sort of get things done and really like handle that thing and that part of your chart, because this is what this time is for. It's giving us a lot of time just in Capricorn. And again, if it's in your first, fourth, seventh, or 10th, we're really, really feeling it. I'm one of those folks, really, really feeling it. You know, so here's some energy to get the work done and to clear some things. Now, Mars is our planet of action. It's a planet where we just like take the bull by the horns. It's where we step up. It's where we fight. We fight for ourselves. We fight for others. It's that warrior energy that we can, you know, bring with us when we're going to conquer something. It's that kind of athlete energy where, you know, you're going that extra mile to get things done. It can also be very martial, which comes from the word Mars, which has to do with like police and military and cutting and weapons and separation and like fires and all of those things, because it is a hot and dry planet. Now, when Mars is in the sign of Capricorn, Capricorn is the feminine sign that's associated with Saturn, and Saturn is like our planet that is cool and it's dry. It represents winter, death, melancholy, also boundaries, places where we work really hard and we reap the benefits in the end. Sometimes it feels like an insurmountable mountain. Sometimes it's like a no, and then we have to like work really hard to figure out what the yes is, you know, in terms of that. But it's also a place where things become classic, where we can work really hard to make beautiful things, especially because, you know, Venus is in Capricorn right now, even though she's retrograde. There is, you know, this quality that can be like beauty over time, you know, like I mean, essentially when we think about it, like that's what an island is. How did Hawaii get to be so beautiful? Because it eroded. That's what beaches are over time, you know. So Saturn is associated with those kinds of things, even though it does have a tendency to be kind of like decay and like old. But you know, like sometimes things can decay and they can become so beautiful, like islands. So just always remember that when we think about Saturn. When we're putting Mars and Capricorn together, what are some of the things that we can look forward to seeing? Well, one, it can really be a place where we can work really hard and we have the energy to make things happen and to create structures in our life. If we're not careful though, it can kind of go way into workaholism. So if you're already like have a penchant for workaholism, like I do, you want to be careful during this time that you don't burn yourself out. Literally burning, because that is a Mars thing. So you don't want to be igniting all the kettles all at the same time and they're all overflowing and then you're not sure exactly like which one to tend to. What's really nice about Capricorn is that it's creating a container, a structure for Mars to play in. Because one of the reasons why Mars sometimes can be considered a malefic planet and why it can be so challenging to deal with is that it's like all of this energy out of nowhere. It's like my mom used to call it like bull in a china shop. You're just like coming in and just breaking stuff and just setting things on fire and saying things that are offensive to everybody, offending like everybody and not caring, and then just, you know, going about your way. And it's just like, whoa, what just happened? Everything's broken. Everybody's hurt. Everybody's crying. Like, what happened? And so sometimes it's difficult to, you know, deal with that kind of sort of big, powerful energy. energy. But if you have a big contained space, it's like having a big dog, like Clifford, you know, like in a small, tiny apartment. That just didn't work. He had to go into like a big house with a big field and all of that. And then you're able to contain all of that energy without like chaos, which can happen sometimes with Mars. You know, Mars can be incredibly chaotic and destabilizing at times. But if it's in a like a well-contained space, there's no limit to like what you can do and how fast you can go and what you can do when you know, kind of are in that contained space. And it gives you like a direction to go. And then if you're pushing all of the energy in a certain direction, well, then you can be, you know, you can really reap some positive benefits with that, such as working hard at what some of the things that you want to do, being very determined, being very specific in how you do things, being very driven. You can be quite regimented in a lot of the things you want to do. It's really good for developing also like positive habits, because, you know, Saturn a lot of times has to do with like things that are chronic and then this cyclical sense of time that can happen. And so things that are happening over and over and over again to you, especially when it comes to like health issues. And so like here we are with Mars, they're saying, okay, let's develop a healthy habit. You know, we have the time to do this. We have the structure and the space to do it. What are some things that we can develop? So it can be really positive if you want to get on an exercise routine, get on a new kind of like weight loss or like diet or like healthy eating and like adding more like herbs or superfoods or whatever it is that you want to do that like has to do with your body and has to do with your energy levels and how you're like physically like exerting yourself, whether that's like exercise or like taking a dance class or whatever, you know, like you will have the energy to kind of sort of do that and, you know, kind of sort of put yourself in that structure. Now with Mars being in Capricorn, it's probably going to be something that looks like a little bit more structured, and something that is not so much like loose and all over the place. But if it was like a specific class that you were taking, a martial arts class, a dance class, or something like that, it's also a really cool place that you can really like produce a lot of content or produce a lot of like whatever it is that you're producing. You'll have the energy to be able to do that. You really put that time and that energy and effort into like, you know, overproduction of things. So that's good if you really just needed to kind of like produce stuff or get a lot of stuff out, whether that be writing, whether that be products for your business. You know, you'll have the energy and you'll just kind of sort of ride that energy into that. Some people that are associated, some people that have, so it's also a place where we can really thrive on challenges. Like if a challenge comes to us, and other times we might kind of back down, or we're like, oh, well, I just don't know how I'm going to do that, or where I'm going to get the energy to do that. With Mars there, you step up to the challenge, you like the challenge, you kind of sort of get off on that challenge. So it's a place where you're just like, yeah, come at me, bro. Like, what do you have? Like, let's do this thing, you know? So that can be good. So some of the challenges that can come with that, because there's always those, of course, has to do with, you know, ruthless competitiveness, just not really caring for the rules, you know, like overstepping the rules, overstepping your boundaries. It can be very authoritarian and just not really care. It's to instill its own thing. It could be a place where, you know, you just lose control or have like some anger issues, and those of course have consequences, because that Saturn ruled signs are all about like the consequences for the things that you do. So we just want to be careful about that. Now, again, like I said, Mars is already entering a space that has been lit up and that's been challenging already. So it's already maybe a little sore. It's already maybe a little tired. And when this new energy coming in, it can feel good at first, but then once it starts hitting up against Venus, and then once it starts, when it conjuncts with Pluto, that can feel like a little bit more explosive, a little bit more like, wow, massive things are changing. Because that is what Mars does. Fire changes things like, you know, dramatically, and in a very showy kind of big brassy way. So, you know, it can bring drama, it can bring some other things that are just a little bit like heavier to deal with as we're negotiating all of that. Mercury's retrograde right now. It's going to be entering Capricorn on the 25th until February the 2nd. Then Mercury is going to conjunct Pluto on the 28th. So those are important because Mercury, as I said before, was starting off in the sign of Aquarius, and then it's moving into the sign of Capricorn, more activation into that Capricornian place in our chart. So it's almost as if Mercury has something it is bringing back, a conversation that needs to be had, and it first starts off making this conjunction with Pluto. And Pluto is a place of power where we either gain power, where we lose power, where things are hidden, and where things are revealed. So the fact that a revelation is coming out for something and information that you didn't know, it could have been something that you were investigating, something you were looking into, and suddenly, jackpot, this is what's really going on. Now you know, now you have to make a decision and decide, you know, what you want to do moving forward with that. It's a place where we can really investigate, where we can have some really deep conversations. We're having deep questions about what's going on in our lives. It's a time where we can really start discussing and talking about like the shadow aspects. Now, again, it's making this conjunction to Pluto twice. This is the first time retrograde, and then it's going to make another conjunction of Pluto when it's direct as it goes, you know, back into Aquarius. So this is the first hit that we're getting. And with this first hit, things will come up, and maybe it's going to be a little raw. It might be a little difficult to kind of sort of negotiate and deal with. But again, we have another opportunity for this to happen. So it can be about solving a mystery. It could be suddenly there's information that we have in terms of like what's going on in the mundane sense in the world, like a journalism, you know, like we just found this out, or, you know, there was a whistleblower and this is what's really going on, you know, so expect those kinds of things to come. Now, some of the challenging things that can come from it is just a lot of, especially with Mars co-present there and Venus for at least the beginning part still retrograde, it can be some real power struggles with the mental things and with verbal things, people manipulating you with their words. It can be a place where people are very powerful and influential in what they say and how they convince you of things, and if you don't really know what's going on, or if you're confused, you can very easily be duped with this energy, so you want to be careful with that too. You can feel a sense of like obsession about things, or obsessively thinking about things, you know, going over and over your feelings and your fears about things. Some of those things can come up because of course those are Plutonian things. You can be having like a lot of overthinking. That can happen too, where it's just like your mind is on reset and it's going over and over and over and over again, you know, and trying to figure out what's going on because things maybe are not exactly making sense, because you don't have the whole picture, which by the end of all of this, you definitely will, but maybe in the beginning you don't. It can be a lot of gossip. It can be bad attitudes, people saying rude things or not being very nice, especially when Venus is retrograde. It can, you know, and Mars just entered, so it can definitely be not, people are just not talking to people in the nicest way. You might not be talking to people in the nicest way. A lot of short patience, a lot of passive aggressive conversations. It won't always be like this, but it's gonna feel like this a little bit. It might just be people are just not as nice verbally as they can be. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're like nefarious, but it just could be a little rough in that sense. Because it's Pluto, there's always a sense of, you know, things that can be like inappropriate conversations, inappropriate sexual talk or conversations, or things that you don't want to hear, or things that, you know, people kind of loop you in that's like none of your business or inappropriate. So, you know, watch out for those things too. And also just, you know, Pluto rules a lot of times, you know, just the nefarious parts, you know, the things that we don't see, the criminal acts, the criminal dark kind of psychological recesses of our mind, and as well as the shadow. So doing shadow at work at this time could prove to be good. Doing it with everyone else, I'm not sure. I'd be very careful about like telling people your deep dark secrets during a Mercury retrograde. Keeping secrets during a Mercury retrograde is just going to be rough, because people will not be likely to keep your secret, because it is a gossipy time, so it's hard for people to not say things, especially if you tell somebody something that's really deep and possibly inappropriate for others to hear. Definitely that could circulate, so I'm going to be careful about that. Next up, we have Venus stationing direct. That's going to be happening on the 29th. Like I said, I'm very, very, very excited about that, because Venus, boy, she has been in a tough place. She's stationing direct at 11 degrees. She will, though, be conjunct Mars for several weeks, doing what I call the danse macabre, which is just this dance where she is no further away than like 4 or 5 degrees from Mars. Her, and like every time she moves, Mars is right along with her. So they're doing this like really interesting, intricate dance of love and hate and destruction and creation and disharmony and harmony, and just working things out. I think both of them are going to heavily influence each other. Now, Mars is in his exaltation in Capricorn, so he's going to have a little bit more say, because Venus, you know, is not. But once Venus transitions into Aquarius and Mars loses a little dignity by moving into Aquarius, I think things will shift a little bit in terms of their interdynamics. Venus is definitely going to be bringing things that are a little bit more agreeable, trying to maintain the balance and harmony that has been so difficult for her to maintain when she was retrograde. So I think there's a little bit of a plus in that, especially as she will be conjuncting Mars, as she's going to conjunct Pluto as well. You know, know, she's coming in to heal some of the things, pour cool water on where things are inflamed, to nurse back to health the sick, and to give water where there is thirst. So I look forward to her kind of bringing in her gifts. She's not going to be bringing in all of them. They're not going to feel as amazing. That's not going to happen. She's not going to really be in her best place, and that's not going to really happen until she is in her exaltation in the sign of Pisces, which we're going to really see like her come through with a lot of that really beautiful kind of watery energy, especially with Neptune there and with Jupiter there. That's going to feel really good. And that's in a few months, but we still have a little bit rough times just because Venus and Mars are going to be together, and she's going to be enclosed between the malefics, between Mars and Saturn when she's in Aquarius. So there's still a little bit of a bumpy road ahead for Venusian things, but at least she's stationing direct. Venusian things have a tendency to bring things together, to make people figure out like, well, what was the point of all of this? It was all about love, and how are we connecting? How can we take two things that are separate, the opposition, and make the opposition kind of come together in a unique and beautiful way? And that it's like a beautiful bandage that you're putting on things. That's kind of essentially what she's doing at this time. So with Venus, she's trying to make things more agreeable. She's trying to build some harmony. She's trying to fix some of these places where things have been very, very bumpy in the Capricornian part of your chart now that she's stationed direct. Venus, of course, is about attraction and desire. It can be signify strong sexual attraction, of course, big creative energy. Of course, with Venus and Mars, both in the sign of Capricorn, Mars is big, like intimate type of sexual energy. With Venus and Mars there together, it definitely has this vibe for sure of like intense passion, intense like sensuality. And you know, even if it's just for one night or just for a week or with an old flame or with a friend or whatever have you, like that kind of like level of intensity. We're not talking about like long term commitment, so to speak. We're not talking about something that'll last forever, but we're talking about like hot passionate times, you know, that can potentially happen when Venus and Mars are together. So even though sometimes like it can be a little contentious, it's like very rom-com-y type of energy. At first the two people, you know, dislike each other, and then they kind of sort of like each other, and then they totally fall for each other, then something separates them again, and then they come back together. So that kind of energy of like at first disdain and then total like, you know, being drawn into the person and having these like deep intimate connections for sure can happen during this transit. It could be a good time also too for just reiterating some of those aspects. If you know, the marriage or the relationship has felt a bit dry, it could be time to have some really like hot intimate time. So make sure you guys are like some of the challenging obviously that comes with that is an excessive amount of yin, excessive amount of yang energy, especially when Mars and Venus are together. Tense emotions, backhanded compliments, difficulties, you know, especially when Venus conjuncts Pluto, which isn't happening, but it will be happening in the next couple of weeks. Just like trying to figure out like some of the things that popped up, some of the things that weren't said, some of the things that were revealed as Mercury is, you know, going through Pluto. Venus is coming in to say, okay, how can we fix things? How can we make them better? You know, are we going to separate? Are we going to stay together? Like, you know, what is it that we're doing? Let's put a bow on this and let's, you know, continue moving forward, even though it's still going to be difficult. As long as Venus and Mars are doing this dance, I feel like even though you get over it, even though we're like even out of Capricorn and Venus and Mars are in Aquarius, there's still this kind of like vibe of like the energy is still continuing, the conversation is still going back and forth, you know, and these are just like big core issues, and I think that's why they're so deep. We're trying to balance things, and things can be very disharmonious at that time, balancing love, balancing anger, balancing passion, balancing like frustration, like all of those things, and those challenges can definitely happen. So some of the things that we can see, especially with Venus and Mars conjunct, especially in Saturn's sign, is just like dispassionate intimacy, you know, like intimacy for the sake of the act, but not necessarily for like our heart is in it. It also can be like relationships that start during this time don't necessarily last. Some of them can though, you know, but for the most part, it's just about like an instant kind of spark that happens. But, you know, whether it's kind of long lasting, whether the person eventually gets on your nerves, or you just don't feel like, you know, kind of still communing in that way. I mean, you know, when we look at it, we pull it out to the mundane sense, it's like, you know, what two countries are like, okay, we're together, we're fighting against this war, but then suddenly somebody tries to withdraw and they don't want to do that anymore because they want to go in a different direction. And it's like, oh, you just left me here. So there's a lot of like kind of like partnership coupling that happens that can be maybe a bit volatile, or that doesn't like last, or it doesn't stay, but it at the moment, at the time, it felt like it was the most important thing. So if you're into drama in your relationships, this is the time for you. It's a very interesting week. The energy is interesting and kind of like an invitation to big energy. So just know that like a lot of energy is coming through. If you're the type of person that doesn't like the high highs and the low lows, this is probably going to feel like a challenging week for you. If you're the type of person that like thrives off of drama and a whole bunch of energy, then you're going to love this week. So you just have to moderate the way that you can so that you're not going off the rails, finding some things that kind of sort of calm and cool you down if that's something that's important to you. And then if you're the type of person that kind of is very meek with their energy and doesn't let it go, then it might feel really good to kind of sort of let her rip, right? And just kind of feel those emotions and jump into things, and just like where it lands, it lands. So thanks so much for tuning into today's video. Hopefully you found some information that will help you through this week. If you have any questions, you can always leave them in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe to this channel because I'm bringing in a lot more content, and then you'll be notified when I have new videos. Also, make sure you like the video, and if you would like to book a natal chart reading, or if you have any questions about your chart, you can always book a reading. My books are open at www.thewildwahine.com. Also, if you're interested in the 2022 Astro forecast for this upcoming year, it's the year ahead forecast. Make sure you go to the website and you can purchase that, and it has a lot of information on what's going on in terms of your Mercury retrogrades and your eclipses and all of the major transits that will be affecting you for 2022, as well as some calendars and some other fun things in there. So make sure you check that out. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next video.